before craft beer, before the big mergers. Canada had dozens of regional breweries, names you'd see on every corner store shelf, brands your dad drank after work, logos painted on the sides of taverns. But most of them are gone now, bought out, shut down, erased. Today, we're remembering 10 Canadian breweries that vanished completely. Let's crack one open. In 1973, two brewing giants merged, Carling from London, Ontario, O'Keeffe from Toronto. Together, they became Carling O'Keeffe, one of Canada's big three brewers. But their roots went deep. O'Keeffe started brewing in the mid-1800s and was one of the first in Canada to use mechanical refrigeration for lager. Carling followed soon after, building a national reputation through aggressive marketing and sports sponsorships. By the 1970s and 80s, Carling O'Keeffe was everywhere. Hockey night in Canada, corner stores, your uncle's garage fridge. Carling Black Label was the flagship. That red and black can, the Hey Mabel Black Label, tagline that everyone knew, even if they didn't drink it. O'Keeffe Ale and O'Keeffe Lager were staples too, smooth, reliable, unpretentious. The company sponsored everything, hockey teams, concerts, community events. They were woven into Canadian culture. But in 1987, Carling O'Keeffe was sold to Australian conglomerate Elders, XL. 2 years later, it merged with MOLSON. And just like that, the name disappeared. Some of the brands lived on under Molson Coors. But Carling O'Keeffe, as an independent brewery, gone. Today, vintage Black Label cans and O'Keeffe signs are prized by collectors. And for anyone who grew up in the 70s or 80s, those names still mean something. They mean hockey nights, backyard barbecues, and a Canada that felt a little simpler. Carling O'Keeffe didn't just make beer, it made memories. Montréal, the 1800s, Scottish brewer William Dow set up shop and built what would become Quebec's largest brewery by the 1950s. Dow Ale, Kingsbeer Lager, Black Horse Ale. These were household names across Quebec. You'd see the amber and green labels in dépanneurs, taverns, and corner stores from Montreal to Quebec City. Dow marketed itself as a modern Quebec beer. The slogan, "Ça c'est Dow," became part of the vernacular. It was local, it was proud, it was everywhere. But then came 1965. A cobalt additive, used to stabilize the beer's foam, was linked to dozens of deaths from cardiomyopathy. The Dow beer deaths became front-page news. Sales collapsed overnight. Trust evaporated. The Quebec City brewery shut down. The brand limped along under National Breweries, then Canadian Breweries, and eventually Molson after it absorbed Carling O'Keeffe. But the damage was done. In 1997, Molson discontinued Dow completely. It's hard to overstate how catastrophic the scandal was. Dow went from Quebec's biggest brewer to a cautionary tale in a single decade. The brand that once symbolized local pride became associated with tragedy. Today, vintage Dow bottles and signs are collector's items. And older Quebecers still remember the brand, not just for what it was, but for how quickly it all fell apart. Dow breweries didn't just vanish, it was erased by a crisis it never recovered from. Hamilton, 1992. LAKEPORT Brewing opened as a small, premium microbrewery. But by the early 2000s, it had pivoted hard. 24 beers for $24. That was the pitch, and it worked. LAKEPORT Pilsener, Honey Lager, and Ice became the go-to beers for anyone looking to stretch a dollar. The cans were simple, white, red, a maple leaf, and that price front and center. LAKEPORT wasn't trying to compete with craft beer or premium imports. It was competing with your grocery budget, and it won. The company captured a massive share of Ontario's discount beer market. Students, construction workers, cottage-goers, everyone who needed cheap beer in bulk bought LAKEPORT. The branding was brilliant in its simplicity. No fancy slogans, no mascots, just value, honest working-class values. But in 2007, Labatt, owned by Belgian giant AB InBev, bought LAKEPORT. 3 years later, they closed the Hamilton Brewery and moved production to London, Ontario. The LAKEPORT name stuck around for a while, but it was never the same. The scrappy, locally owned underdog was now just another brand in a corporate portfolio. By the mid-2000s, Lakeport had faded from shelves entirely. Today, Lakeport is remembered as the brewery that started the Buck-a-Beer era in Ontario. It proved that Canadians would line up for cheap, drinkable beer and that big brewers were watching. Lakeport didn't vanish quietly, it was swallowed whole. Edmonton, 1913, the Imperial Brewery opened its doors. Brick tower, steam whistles, the smell of malt drifting over the city. In 1958, MOLSON bought it, and for the next half-century, that brewery was a landmark. You could see the tower from blocks away. You could smell the hops on the breeze. It was part of the city. The plant brewed Molson Canadian and Molson Pilsener for the prairies. It also housed the quirky Molson House, a fur trade-style hospitality center where visitors could tour the brewery and taste fresh beer straight from the tanks. For decades, the Edmonton brewery hummed. Bottles clinked, trucks loaded, workers clocked in and out. It was steady, reliable, a good place to work. But by the 2000s, cracks appeared. A workers' strike in 2007, shifting consumer preferences from bottles to cans, the loss of a major contract to brew Foster's Lager. Molson looked at the numbers and decided Edmonton was expendable. The brewery closed in 2007. The iconic brick tower came down. The site was redeveloped into the Edmonton Brewery District. Condos, shops, offices, modern, clean, soulless. Older Edmontonians still talk about the brewery, not just the beer, but the presence, that smell, that sound, the sense that something was being made there, something real. Today, Molson Canadian is brewed elsewhere and shipped to Alberta. It tastes the same, but it's not the same. The Edmonton Molson Brewery didn't just close, it left a hole. Sudbury, 1907, Northern Ontario, mining towns, hard work, cold winters. Northern breweries understood its audience, blue-collar workers who wanted a cold beer after a long shift underground. The company expanded through acquisitions, operating plants in Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie, and North Bay. The flagship, Northern Ale, simple, strong, affordable. But Northern also did something unusual. In the 1960s, they introduced the draft ball, draft beer packaged in a plastic sphere. It was weird, it was gimmicky, and people loved it. The draft ball became a novelty item. You'd see them at parties, cottages, and backyard barbecues. They didn't pour like bottles or cans, but that was part of the charm. In 1971, Northern became part of Canadian Breweries, but by 1977, the employees bought it back, turning it into one of Canada's few worker-owned cooperatives. For a while, that worked. The brewery stayed afloat through the 80s and 90s, serving its loyal Northern Ontario base. But declining sales, mounting debt, and tax troubles caught up. In 2006, Northern Breweries declared bankruptcy and closed for good. The draft ball is now a collector's item. Vintage Northern Ale cans and signs turn up at flea markets and antique shops. And in Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie, and North Bay, older folks still remember when their beer came from down the road. Northern Breweries was built for the North, and when it died, a piece of Northern Ontario died with it. Winnipeg, 1998. The craft beer wave was just starting to reach the prairies. AGASSIZ Brewing Company opened with big ambitions. They wanted to bring bold, creative beers to Manitoba, a province dominated by Labatt and Molson, Catfish Cream Ale, Bison Blonde Lager, Harvest Haze, Hefeweizen. The names celebrated the prairies, the wildlife, the landscape. The bottles featured bright labels with catfish and bison, evoking Manitoba's outdoors. For a few years, AGASSIZ was the talk of Winnipeg's beer scene. Their beers showed up in local bars and liquor stores. They were proof that craft brewing could work in Manitoba. But distribution was a nightmare. Manitoba's liquor laws and limited shelf space made it nearly impossible for small breweries to compete with the big players. By 2002, AGASSIZ was in financial trouble. The brewery closed, though a contract brewing arrangement kept some of the brands alive for a few more years. By 2010, AGASSIZ was completely gone. Today, Winnipeg has a thriving craft beer scene. Breweries like Half Pints, Torque, and Stone Angel carry the torch. But locals who were there in the late 90s remember AGASSIZ as the one that tried first. It didn't survive, but it paved the way. AGASSIZ Brewing Company was Manitoba's craft beer pioneer. And even though it vanished, it proved that there was an appetite for something different. Toronto, 1878, Queen Street East and Sumac Street. Robert T. Davies opened Dominion Brewery in a city that was rapidly industrializing. Toronto was thirsty, and Davies had ambition. His signature beer was White Label India Pale Ale. It won awards, international recognition, the kind of accolades that turned a local brewery into a name people trusted. Dominion also brewed porter and lager, but White Label was the star. The label was elegant, Victorian, gold lettering on crisp white. It looked expensive, even if it wasn't. In 1891, British investors bought the brewery. Dominion was marketed as a beer with national reach. Dominion suggested scale, legitimacy, and quality. But consolidation was coming. By the early 1900s, smaller breweries were being absorbed into larger conglomerates. Dominion became part of Canadian Brewing Corporation, and production shifted to the Cosgrave Brewery. In 1936, the original Dominion Brewery closed. The building didn't disappear, though. It was restored and still stands today as part of Toronto's Corktown neighborhood. Condos now, offices, the usual story, but collectors prize old Dominion bottles and signs. White Label IPA is remembered as one of Toronto's first premium beers, proof that craft brewing and attention to quality aren't new ideas. Dominion Brewery was a product of Victorian ambition. It thrived for half a century, then got swallowed by the same forces that reshaped the entire Canadian beer industry. The building survived, the brewery didn't. Toronto, 1985. Frank Heaps and Larry Sherwood had an idea. They'd open a brewery that made German-style lager, real lager, not the mass-market stuff pumped out by Labatt and Molson, something with character. Upper Canada Brewing Company launched as one of Toronto's first modern microbreweries, and it worked. Upper Canada Lager became the flagship, clean, malty. A little more expensive than the big brands, but worth it. Upper Canada Dark Ale followed, richer, fuller, a beer for people who wanted flavor. The brewery also had a gift shop that sold beer on Sundays, which was a novelty at the time. Torontonians lined up. It became a destination. By the early 90s, Upper Canada was one of the largest independent breweries in Canada. They went public in 1996, raising capital to expand. But growth came with risk. In 1998, Sleeman Breweries bought Upper Canada. The Toronto brewery closed. Production moved to Guelph. Most of the beers were discontinued, leaving only 2 brands limping along under the Sleeman banner. Upper Canada's founders, Heaps and Sherwood, went on to help start Steam Whistle Brewing, one of Toronto's most successful craft breweries. But Upper Canada itself was gone. Today, craft beer fans remember Upper Canada as a trailblazer. It proved there was a market for something different, something better. It showed that Torontonians would pay a bit more for quality. Upper Canada didn't survive the 90s, but it inspired a movement. Ottawa, 1865. Henry Fisher. Brading and his partners opened Union Brewery near Wellington Street and LeBreton Flats. The city was full of lumberjacks. Parliament was new, and everyone drank. Brading's brewed English-style ales using British-trained brewmasters. The water came from a natural spring. The beer was strong, reliable, and built for men who worked hard. Brading's ale became the standard in Ottawa. You'd find it in taverns, lumber camps, and boarding houses. The brewery even built a beer tunnel to the Ottawa River, allowing barrels to be loaded onto boats and shipped downriver. For decades, Brading's was Ottawa's brewery. Local, trusted, the taste of the capital. But by the 1930s, consolidation hit. E.P. Taylor's Canadian Breweries empire was swallowing up regional breweries across Ontario, and Brading's was absorbed into what would eventually become Carling O'Keefe. The Brading name faded. The Ottawa plant was demolished. The brand disappeared. Today, historians celebrate Brading's as Ottawa's first major brewery, a piece of the city's 19th century identity. But unless you're a beer history buff, you've probably never heard of it. There's a small memorial, a plaque, and a few collectors who prize old Brading's bottles with that faded label and Victorian typeface. Brading's Union Brewery didn't just vanish, it was erased by an industry that had no room for the small and local. Ottawa's first beer, gone. Waterloo, 1844. A German immigrant named David KUNTZ started selling beer from a wheelbarrow. It worked, so he opened a brewery. The Spring Brewery, later renamed KUNTZ's Park Brewery under his son Louis, became one of Ontario's largest breweries by the early 1900s. The beer was brewed with water from an on-site natural spring, and locals swore it tasted cleaner, crisper, better. KUNTZ also built a public park around the spring. Families would visit, drink fresh water from the fountain, stroll the grounds. The brewery wasn't just a business, it was part of the community. But in 1929, E.P. Taylor's Canadian Breweries bought KUNTZ. It was renamed Carling KUNTZ Brewery. Then, during World War II, the German surname was quietly dropped. It just became Carling. By the late 1970s, after more mergers and consolidations, the Waterloo plant closed. The KUNTZ name was gone. Today, KUNTZ Park still exists in Waterloo, a reminder. But most people who walk through it have no idea it's named after a brewery that once employed hundreds and defined the city's brewing identity. Waterloo is still known for beer, thank you, Brick Brewing and MOLSON Coors. But KUNTZ was first. It laid the foundation. David KUNTZ started with a wheelbarrow. His family built an empire. And then the empire was absorbed, rebranded, and erased. KUNTZ Brewery didn't just vanish, it was quietly written out of history. 10 breweries, 10 names that once meant something. They didn't just make beer, they made jobs, traditions, and memories. And then they were gone, bought out, shut down, forgotten. If you remember any of these names, hit like and subscribe for more lost pieces of Canadian history.